special guest. He is the host of the Confederacy of Dunks podcast and friend to the show, Freddie Rivas. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Did you get any good Black Friday shopping in or anything like that?
I actually did participate in Black Friday this year. I bought the NBA 2K, like 2K21 game,
Oh,
last week. So I think that was, but it was labeled a Black Friday sale. So
okay. That
I don't know.
counts. I'm gonna allow it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Whew.
Um, so so last week, Freddie, I was on the air live Friday at 9, which we are every week, and free agency started at 6 p.m. And so it was just a mad frenzy.
hmm
Me refreshing Twitter, looking up, any Woj bombs. Like I'm refreshing Adrian Woj's like Twitter, like he's like a guy not texting me back, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh but this week, the dust has settled, the hurricane has left, we're left with the rubble. No, I'm not going to keep going on with this hurricane
No,
analogy.
please keep going on. I was
We-
hoping it would there'd be like a Bogdanovich analogy at the end of it, and then
yes,
it's like
yes, we
we
got
still don't know, like
we got to figure out whose house got destroyed,
that's
who
right.
hid in the doorway instead of the basement,
Who has mild water damage, but
who
it's
has
actually pretty
water.
expensive. You know what I mean? Like,
But before we recap all the free agency, I want to touch on another trade rumor that has come up this week. And it's so crazy that after a massive sort of free agency run, we're still here with a lot of unhappy stars, a lot of unhappy superstars, one of which the latest is John Wall. And so I was reading about this and it's still a little confusing as to whether he actually requested a trade or
hmm
not. I've seen some media outlets report that he has requested a trade, but I was reading an article in CBS Sports where they were like, John Wall was at this Thanksgiving style like charity event, and reporters were asking him if he had in fact requested a trade, and he just kept saying no comment. And I'm like, poor guy. Like, I mean, I'm
and
not what.
also like, what is that? You know what I mean? Like, is that actually a substantial rumor? Like, there was some of this with Russ and Harden, with them. I
Yeah.
think they both did officially request a trade, but the lead up to it seemed to be a lot of like, well, James Harden's hasn't been responding to like most of his texts.
Yeah.
It was all stuff like that. It was like, what is that really what this like these giant $1 million like negotiations are like hedging on? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But basically, and all this Giannis stuff this week too is just like
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's tough because there's not a lot of substantial news, but something big could come from it. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just it. And I feel like I don't know if it's because it's like we're going into like Thanksgiving weekend in the US, and like the media outlets needed like one or two few things on the docket just to keep
Yeah.
people interested.
Yeah, you got the football, but you need something. Hey, John Wall wants to get traded.
Yeah.
What do you
So
think?
while John Wall is handing out turkeys, Freddie, what do you think? I mean, even if he hasn't requested a trade, he's been in trade rumors quite heavily for some time now. He has missed 2 seasons of NBA basketball, but apparently is healthy and ready to come back this season, which is great. But I'm curious to know, what do you think of his situation? Where do you think he would be a good fit? Because it seems like maybe he just wants a fresh start at this point. It's been
Yeah,
unclear, but yeah, let me know your thoughts.
and maybe Washington too wants a fresh start,
Yes, that as
um,
well.
or maybe just to restart with Beal. But yeah, I think I'm probably more optimistic than most when it comes to John Wall. I'm not exactly sure of his age, but I don't think he's in the category of like like Russ and Harden and KD, where he's kind of like 32, 31, 33.
He might be 30, but let me look it
Oh, is
up.
he 30? Yeah, I
Yeah.
would guess 28 or something like that if I had to. But anyways, yeah, he's got this,
Yeah, he's
wildly.
30.
Oh, he is 30. Okay. So he has this giant contract, and I think him and Russ are usually the people that are talked about as having the worst contracts in the NBA. But I mean, the guy has a lot of talent, and I think most of his game was predicated on being an explosive athlete, but there's just a ton of skill there. He's an elite passer. I'm not convinced he won't be able to kind of like get a shot. He doesn't seem like a stubborn type of player.
Mhm.
And it's pretty horrific back-to-back injuries. I think it was Achilles, or it was an ACL, and then perhaps Achilles
Yeah.
in the like bathtub accident. So yeah, I think he's someone who, like, I don't expect John Wall to go to a team and explode. Like, let's say, I don't know, New Orleans traded a bunch for him and he goes there. I don't really think he's going to go tear up the league, but I don't think I think just seeing him on the floor again, people are going to be like, oh, this guy's awesome.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, if I was Washington, I would probably keep him at least till the mid-season trade deadline,
Oh,
because
definitely.
when we start to see him play again, because I feel like a lot of people have just kind of forgotten John Wall, and like the whole world has changed in the last 2 years. You know what I
Yes.
mean? It's just like too much has happened in
So much has happened since both injuries.
yeah, yeah. And so I think once people start to see him play, then if anything, that would increase his trade value, I would suspect. And so if you're still looking to move on from him, I feel like that would be the time to do it. But on the flip side, maybe just seeing him play again will sort of like rejuvenate everybody's spirits and kind of maybe want to sort of re-engage in the idea of building around him and Beal again. Because I mean, all these like superstar trades, it's like you're basically agreeing to tank, right? Like you're not going to go superstar for superstar. Like that so rarely happens.
Yeah, especially when the contract is like a giant one that the team taking the contract is kind of like, this is so crappy for us. So unless it's OKC that kind of like plans to get a Chris Paul,
Mm.
and they're like, no, we'll hold on to him the whole season if we don't get the right trade. And they did. And then, a year went by and they're like, that's fine. That's cool. We made the playoffs. That was fun. But like, we're still going to be bad. And Chris Paul isn't part of our trajectory. So I feel like, yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation because I don't know if Wall's going to necessarily put you over the top. Like, I can't think of a situation where they really need a point guard, and that point guard can also be the highest paid player on the team.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, but yeah, if I'm Washington, I definitely want to see, as Beal has kind of like risen up, I want to see Wall Beal, maybe one last time for a couple months.
Yeah, just like one little last hurrah, perhaps.
And for the trade deadline too, like it could just be exciting, I think, as well, to see those two guys and to see John Wall be on the court again after being so severely injured.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. I was also thinking like I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I don't know if like from a trade machine perspective if this works, throw in extra cash, draft picks, et cetera, et cetera. But I was wondering if like a John Wall Blake Griffin trade would be interesting for both teams, because Detroit is so big and they like need a point guard. And I feel like Bradley Beal and Blake Griffin team could make an Eastern Conference playoffs and maybe, not even be in the play-in tournament. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
Okay, I'm glad you did, because as you were doing that, okay, my first instinct when you were saying that, I was like, Catherine, this is such a reach. Like, it's going to be trading two bloated contracts. Like, I appreciate the idea, but like Washington and Detroit
Mhm.
just swapping people. But I'm looking at it and it's kind of making a lot of sense. Like, okay, so
Ooh.
check this out. John Wall's contract goes to yeah, he's got a player option. So it goes to 22, 23. to basically takes him to age 32.
Mm-hmm.
And then Griffin has a player option, also takes him to age 32, but it ends a year earlier. So if you're Detroit and you're kind of like, hey, we want to continue being bad, and you're Washington and you're like, let's show Beal something. And then we have Beal, Griffin, and we can start to work things out.
Yeah.
Hey, that's actually a wicked idea. And I'm so sorry that I doubted you that hard. I didn't realize how similar their contracts were. They both have
You know what? Thank you so
terrible,
much.
crazy contracts. It's
This
nuts.
was just like pure instinct on my part. Just like honestly, like the gods were looking down on me just on this very moment. Because we're
you're like full
live and
Queen's Gambit mode here.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah. I just like took an Ambien and stared at the ceiling for a sec and really
Yeah.
figured it out.
okay, I just watched the first episode too. Cheers.
Okay, great.
I literally just did. So I got Queen's Gambit references for days, you know. But yeah, pop one of those things, look at the ceiling,
Yeah.
roll for Griffin, bada boom, bada bing.
Bada boom, bada bang. Okay, so let's move on to some sort of free agency highlights. I mean, we can't possibly cover all that was NBA free agency
we're going
this
through
year.
every trade.
No. But I'm just wondering who was your biggest winner in free agency and who was your biggest loser in free agency?
So my biggest like winner as far as a team is, I mean, I'm kind of split between a couple teams. I think Portland did pretty well, kind of just like around the edges. Like I think they did a bunch of like kind of not super splashy, but kind of smart things. So I think they're going to be able to ride the momentum and be better than they were last year. But also, you know, I want to give credit to the Lakers for adding talent. Really, I mean, I think they'll miss some of the guys they lost, but the fact is they won the championship, and it does look from the outset like they got at least a little bit better. Yeah, so I think if I had to put one winner, I would say Portland, and because of the Covington signing.
Right.
Like, I don't think he's amazing or anything, but I think that's good for them.
Those are great picks. I also had the Lakers as my winner of the free agency. It's so funny because you're like, oh, I think they're going to miss some of the players that they lost. I think they're only going to miss Rajon Rondo and like maybe like they're definitely not missing Danny Green or Dwight Howard at all. I think they couldn't wait to get rid of those two.
Fair.
And I'm not even saying that's like fair to them, but I'm just saying from the Lakers perspective. I mean, and I talked about this last week, and I've talked about this many times. The actual change.org petitions against Danny Green was pretty next level.
Oh man.
And Dwight Howard has like just like I want to say generic crazy vibes. Like I don't even know explicitly how
Dwight Howard's got so much going on that I can totally see that. I feel like Danny's contract was like, you know, the fact that he got 15 a year just made it a little bit like onerous.
It was more tradable.
Yeah.
Yeah, like because like Dwight Howard, like I'm not saying he dyed his hair red, wears leopard print, and walks a cat on a leash, but that is his energy.
Yeah, and I will say that if he does do that, get that man on a runway. Because I think it would be dazzling and wonderful, and people would go wild.
Would be so mad. Westbrook would be
he'd be
pissed.
furious.
Yeah, he would definitely try to one up that for sure. But and then they both ended up with the 76ers very like unintentionally.
Oh right, yeah. So
Danny Green was a OKC player for I think less than 48 hours, and then got traded again.
Yeah. And then McGee, can't forget about McGee. He went to the Cleveland Cavaliers, never to be seen or heard from again.
Right.
I feel like if you're in Cleveland right now, it's going to be tough to get like a headline or some news for a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I do think like the Lakers were really smart this offseason. They absolutely knew that they weren't gonna necessarily repeat with the exact same team they had. Also, they're just
That's a great point.
they're an older, or at least they were an older team. And even though they did sign Marcus Gasol, like I think getting Dennis Schroeder and Montrezl Harrell, that does make them a younger team than they
And Wes Matthews,
and Wes Matthews, yes, which was
it's
huge.
big.
And I think being a bit younger is so important for them as LeBron James gets older. It's like you don't want like a starting five where the whole team is like in their mid 30s.
No, and I think like this has been said a bunch before, but this LA team was very likely going to be like the worst LeBron AD team, like the team that just won the championship. And really, when the offseason went down, like the storyline was mostly like we were all laughing at the clown car of role players
Yeah.
that the Lakers signed. It was like, Rondo, McGee, Howard, um, Deion Waiters, later on J.R.
Yeah,
Smith.
and it was this weird
It was a
like
joke.
LeBron
Like,
James friend slash frenemy like revenge tour sort of.
yeah, exactly. So, but I think they're better designed, but at the same time, I don't look at Montrezl Harrell as like this huge, or like him and Gasol as like this crazy upgrade.
Mhm.
And I actually think that Davis is going to have to play a bunch more center because, Gasol's not going to go out there and log 30 minutes a game playing center. And I'm pretty sure they don't have anyone else. So Davis is going to have to bang a lot more. But yeah, I think it's LA as the clearest picture to a win. And I think if there's another team that won the offseason, we'll find out later. Like you mentioned in
Yeah.
our pod before, like it's pretty big win that the Sixers were able to get rid of some of their bloated parts. Or maybe it's
Mhm.
a big win if the Rockets don't panic and trade their players for less than they're worth, right?
Mhm. No, it's an excellent point, and I agree with you about Gasol, even though we will save a bit of that for our Raptors homer moment coming up.
Fair.
But I wanted to talk to you about Anthony Davis while we're still doing Lakers talk. So the big elephant in the room really is that he has not signed his
Mm-hmm.
extension yet. And the latest theory I've heard is that they are waiting. This is like borderline conspiracy theory, but theory that they are waiting to see what Giannis does.
Oh, I
Because
think that's total. I think it's true.
yeah, and that if Giannis does not sign the supermax, then Anthony Davis would be willing to sign, I think, a 1+1
Hmm.
deal, because then that gives them more space to bring in Giannis in 2021.
Oh, for the Lakers to bring in Giannis?
Yeah, yeah.
No
That
way.
I
That's
know,
too
puke,
crazy.
right? Puke.
No, and also
Puke
I just feel
emoji.
like
Yeah.
logistically, I'm like, you know what? Too much has to happen there.
But
One
they
thing
could do it. If anyone can do it, they can do it.
the Lakers could, those Lakers. Um, I just want to look up Anthony Davis's age because on a podcast I was listening to, might have been like Windhorse or something. But they were saying, oh no, it was the Jump actually.
Mhm.
McMahon, I think. Was also saying a big part of what Davis might be doing is just lining up his age. So he might just be,
Right.
I'm going to sign a 2+1, and then my super max will start when I'm 31. So it might not be. So Davis might not be like, I don't want to get locked in until I'm 31 and 32 and hit the market a little bit old. Like he wants to hit the market when he's 31 or 30,
Right.
probably.
I mean,
Right?
and I think that's probably what'll happen if Giannis does sign the supermax.
Yeah. Although I just don't. I don't think he's going to do it. I'd be shocked if he signed the supermax
I
because
would be shocked if he signed it too, especially because he hasn't done it yet.
and it just seems like everyone in his world is like, why would you ever give up your leverage?
Right. I mean, yeah, because I mean, we've seen with big time stars like MVP players a la Kevin Durant that even if you have a horrific injury, you can still get a max contract if you're on that level. So
Yeah.
maybe he's not worried about the money or about the injury. Personally, I would sign a super max just because I'm not turning that down.
Hmm.
And then a la Anthony Davis, demand a trade later.
And can I say, as someone who everyone always says, if I don't have $1 million, so I would obviously say yeah, like I wouldn't
Yeah,
turn down the
I mean,
contract.
maybe that's part of my perspective.
Let me say I would. So as someone who, I've never even came close to understanding the concept of $1 million, I think I'd look at a supermax and I'd look the other way if it didn't fit all of my criteria.
Right. I mean, maybe one day, Freddie, you and I will be doing this podcast and we'll look like Kendrick Perkins, with just like that
Mhm.
beautiful fireplace behind him and like those big like beams in his mansion, all that
Yeah.
good stuff.
And someone's gonna be like, "You guys made it. Do you want the supermax?" And I'll be like, "You know what? I'll pass."
With that being said, who is your biggest free agency loser?
Okay, so this is one of those ones I've tried to get cute, but
Mhm.
I do believe Charlotte signing Hayward is very bad.
Yep.
There's just, there's just no way it's going to be really good. And he's not even really a player that's like, maybe he's an all-star, but I think he's not an overwhelming all-star. So to have him, when we had DeMar DeRozan, when the Raptors had DeMar DeRozan for all those years, people were, frustrated at like his lack of abilities and being overpaid and not performing in the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. Like Hayward's going to be quite a bit more disappointing than that and is paid a lot more at
Yeah.
an older age. So,
And with a very terrible injury track record.
well, that's also it.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, you never know, right? So maybe if you're Charlotte, this gives you a little bit of a legitimacy and it's a building block of sorts, but doesn't make a lot of sense unless maybe you're just, no, it doesn't make sense, because I was even going to say, hey, you have LaMelo Ball, maybe you want to, you don't want him to waste away his first couple years in the NBA, but he's going to. They're not going to be very good, and well, I don't know. Charlotte has I was sad that they didn't get invited to the bubble because I thought they would have done better than Washington.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, just a lot of money for a player that's just not very good. But yeah, I don't know if Charlotte is the ultimate losers. I think that contract is the worst thing.
No, I have them as the ultimate loser of
Yeah.
of free agency. We're not saying they're going to be the ultimate loser of the season or anything like that, but of free agency, I have them as my loser as well. And I agree with everything you said, and I've thought about this a lot because the pro signing Gordon Hayward argument is that, well, smaller market teams
Yeah,
have
we're
to
Raptors
do
fans.
this.
We get it.
We have to do this. Yeah, but then I'm like, it fundamentally goes against how I believe you should build a winning team. Because as Raptors fans who are, I mean, I don't consider Toronto a smaller market team, but we're not a free agency destination.
Yeah, by in the NBA, we're not a small city, period.
Yeah.
But in the NBA landscape, we
We are
kind of we
considered
come
that.
out of the
Yeah.
wash as a lesser market.
Yeah, and I just think it goes against how I believe teams should build, and how I believe teams should build has fundamentally been proven by the Raptors over this last decade. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't tank to do it. We did it through strategic trades and very good scouting and a G League team system that has really been able to build up and amplify young players into very good, even all-star level quality NBA players. And it's what the San Antonio Spurs did.
Spurs
And
East, baby.
we're basically Spurs East.
We did
And,
it.
and so we're never going to be that like losing team. Like, even if we have a season where we're kind of like a first round exit or another season where we're a second round exit, we know that those are transition years now. And we're never going to be that like, okay, let's just pack it in. Let's just trade all our assets away. Let's just collect draft picks and, roll the dice for the next like decade. You know what I mean?
I mean, Masai has never, since his time in Denver, he's just showed no appetite to be a loser,
Right.
or to build down to then build up.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think the whole tanking thing's really confusing because there's different like levels of it, and it does seem like, for instance, Presti in Oklahoma is doing, he's not doing full like the process and trying to be bad, but he is accumulating assets at like a ridiculous pace. And I think that looks really impressive, but it's so much harder to put those assets to use, because once you do that, it's kind of like you're climbing. It's like a house of cards, really. And if you're the
Mm-hmm.
Utah Jazz, the Spurs, you know, even though they are a free agent destination, the Miami Heat, I'll throw them in there. Houston, um, the Raptors, it's like a house of cards. You have to build it up super slow, and it's tedious, and you can't, you can't rush anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've seen from teams that tank, it's kind of like, if you don't tank right, you're just a couple years away from being held hostage by that superstar. So you have to have a good, like you said, G League system development. And one thing I'll always add in with tanking is, if you're a Raptors fan, like a hardcore Raptors fan that wants to tank, you are not paying attention to who runs the other teams in the Eastern Conference. If
Yeah.
we lived in the,
Yeah.
if the Raptors played in the West, I think it would be a different attitude. But there's, at any given time, there's like 5, 6, or 7 like jokes of the franchise. So as a
Yeah.
Raptor fan, like, there's never any reason to be worse than 8th or 9th. It would be hard to be.
No, I mean, I completely agree. And just going back to the Charlotte thing before we're in full on Raptors mode here.
Oh, sorry.
No, it was perfect. I'm the one who started the tangent, so
I
that's
always
fully on
drift.
me. That was fully on me.
Whew.
But I just want to say that I think because they're like feeling this pressure to just do something, and then that's why they signed Gordon Hayward. And then it's like, well, now you've locked up so much money in this guy, and it's going to be harder to build. Like, you might be an 8th seat now, like you might be better than the Orlando Magic now or the Brooklyn Nets like a year ago, but how are you going to progress from this point, because you don't have as many tradable assets now? So I feel like it was just deeply short-sighted to keep a fan base somewhat energized in a after years and years of just not going anywhere. And I think it was short-sighted, and I think it'll prove to be costly long term.
Yeah, it's kind of like, hey, remember when we were the Bobcats and we made the 7 seed? We're going to do that with the Hornets. And it's like,
Right.
okay, this
Yeah.
kind of sucks. You know what? Let me throw in the Clippers too, because I think Ibaka is amazing,
Mm.
and will be good for the Clippers. But I think the fact that they couldn't keep Trez, and specifically that he went across the hallway to the Lakers,
Mhm.
is a big loss. Like, you don't want to give
Yeah.
your direct competition one of your best players.
Well, I mean, I think the Clippers are really interesting because I do think signing Serge Ibaka was a big win. I actually thought the Lakers should have signed Serge Ibaka, but maybe they realized like they couldn't get him or weren't willing to sign him for as much money, and then just quickly sidestepped to Montrezl Harrell
It was the
instead.
Kawhi Danny thing all over again.
All over again. But I think I feel about the Clippers the way I feel about the 76ers, in that they've improved. I'm intrigued, but I'm not convinced they will win.
Right. Like, I'm with you. I think both those teams they've like cleaned up their room,
Yeah. Oh, and while
or
while
they're
we're here,
trying to.
while we're here on Clippers talk, I will say this real quick. And I said it on my podcast, I think maybe like a month or so ago, but I believe it will not be very long before the Sharks start swimming around the Clippers because Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are both free agents at the end of this season. And all these teams have saved up all this space for Giannis. Only one team's going to get Giannis.
Yep.
And I think their plan Bs and Cs and Ds, et cetera, are going to be around those two guys because I don't think they're going to win a championship. I don't think they're happy. And although I think Ty Lue is like a good coach and I'm glad he has this opportunity, I do think he deserved a chance, but I just don't think they're going to win. I'm going to say it now. I'm going to make a very bold prediction. I do not think Kawhi Leonard will retire a Clipper.
Ooh, I like that.
Because
I like that a lot.
he left to go home, but I don't think he's staying home.
Yeah, well, I mean, all the reports coming about, he like lived in San Diego. He made all the team like flights late, and
he was a spoiled brat, basically.
As a Raptors fans, it's like it's too hard, or it's really hard not to just like have like the biggest "I told you so" face. Like we were a really good team. Kyle was important. Siakam was amazing. The narrative that Kawhi was like the best player on earth and no one could beat him and he could win with any team was like totally, I mean, not totally false, but it was like I would say like 1/10 of the truth.
False enough and
dominant enough to the point where I think you could see that, you could see him wanting a point guard. And I remember saying as soon as that team was kind of like crowned too early on, my big thing was like, what are they going to do with Lou Williams and Beverly at the point guard? Like that is not a point guard duo that's going to do much of anything for you.
And they were outspoken about their about how unhappy they were with Kawhi this season. I thought those two were the most outspoken people on the team, was Lou Williams and Patrick Beverly. Do I have that right?
Yeah, and then Montrezl Harrell. Well, he didn't say anything about Kawhi, I don't think, but he just said that the Lakers or the Clippers weren't very interested in him.
Right. So, I wouldn't be surprised. I also think that we're going to have a ton of trades by the midseason trade deadline this year.
It's going to be a really, really active season, and I also feel like we're still in. The NBA, like the gears are turning, like we're still in this transition period where in 10 years we'll look back and like, oh my God. So Cleveland and Golden State played each other 4 times in a row in the finals. And then Golden State lost and never went back to the finals. But then this era happened. And yes, I did just say that because I've always believed that. And that's not like I'm like totally feeling for Clay. But I said that when we beat them.
Right.
I thought that the team looked done and looked like they had played 5 straight finals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, they really did. With that being said, Freddie, let's make it time to go into our Raptors Homer moment. Now, it was a crazy hectic week for the Toronto Raptors. To recap, we re-signed Fred VanVleet. We also re-signed Chris Boucher. We said goodbye to Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol, and we said hello to some new faces, Aaron Baines, Alex Len, and we drafted Malachi Flynn and Jalen Harris. Freddie, did I miss anyone?
Yes, DeAndre Bembry.
That's right. I knew it. As I hit my mic.
DeAndre. Yeah, I know. That was like, that was weird because you went back to punch the screen, but your mic moved.
Yeah. I mean, this mic is like bigger than my face, so that's bound to happen.
Listen, it's gotta happen.
Man!
Guess what? We just released Duan Hernandez.
That's right, and we released Duan Hernandez.
And he said he had a tweet that was like, "Bet on yourself, I guess." It was really sad.
Oh my gosh, I saw that. I
Yeah.
didn't know if it was sad or if it was passive aggressive or,
Oh yeah, maybe it was passive aggressive. Fair.
like maybe he's a little salty.
Yeah, he could be
But
salty.
he was injured, right?
He was injured basically his whole rookie season with us. He hurt
Yeah.
his heel early on, and
So it's like, what are you gonna do?
yeah.
He can't play in Tampa. Well, let's start with the big highlights here. So Fred VanVleet, I know you love this signing.
Love it.
Love it. I mean, I was saying on your podcast earlier this week that it's one of the reasons we watch sports is to see a guy like Fred VanVleet go from being undrafted to having the largest contract for an undrafted player in NBA history, and the whole bet on yourself thing really paying off.
Oh man, so it's such an incredible story. He's an incredible player and personality. And just yeah, like to have him on the contract he's on during his late 20s is just so awesome for the Raptors. He's only going to improve as a player. I think even some of the stuff that bothers me, or not bothers me about Fred, but things I wish he would do better so we would win more. Over dribbling the ball sometimes. Like he can figure that stuff out. He has the skills to, anyways. There's no reason he can't continue to learn off Kyle Lowry and just become better and better and better. So I think locking up a guy like that is always going to disappoint some fans who want like a Lillard or, some kind of like big opposing figure at the point guard. And yeah, it will be a thing that we have a point guard that's not huge. But I think based on his shooting and his skill set, he's good to go. He could be our point guard on a championship team.
Yeah, and I think it's great that we have both him and Siakam long term. Like these are the two we're clearly going to be building around for the foreseeable future. I mean, obviously we still have Kyle at least for a little bit. We don't know how many years we'll have Kyle going forward. But I mean, I think that's great. We didn't, we obviously lost something at the center position. We talked about Serge and Gasol both going to LA, which breaks our hearts also because it's LA. But sorry, were you gonna say more?
No, I was just like I'm just remembering, like just getting re-traumatized.
Right, and you know what? I do think personally, if I put on a more objective cap, I think losing Serge was far worse than losing Gasol. I do think Gasol is. I mean, to be honest, I'm surprised he's still in the NBA. That's like really harsh to say, but I thought he looked so bad in the bubble that I'm surprised that a contending team picked him up.
Yeah, no, the rumor that he was going to go to Barcelona was taken with the least amount of surprise by everyone. So I'm honestly kind of surprised that he signed a 2-year deal with LA and everyone's like, bravo. It's like this guy, everyone just accepts the fact that he's like, I'm retiring. And now everyone's like, LA, one step ahead of the game. And it's like, okay, all right.
Well, and I was listening to the Low Post earlier, and like Zach Lowe was like still very, very high on Gasol and was like insistent that like he is better than how he looked in the bubble. And I'm like, I'm not so sure. I mean, if you want to take that risk, like by all means, go ahead. But I don't remain convinced of that fact watching him all last season long.
Yeah, I my most optimistic version of Gasol is that he basically played such a continuous stretch of basketball that led to that hamstring injury at the early part of the year, which I think even with COVID, he kind of like wasn't able to recover well enough. And, I think Nurse is brilliant, but I do think there were some offensive issues where I think Gasol could be used differently and better, and probably will be in LA. But all that said, he's at the end.
Yeah.
Like he's at the end. And I think he's like a twisted ankle away from retiring. So I don't know. I don't think he's that's not to say he's not a loss because, This guy chugged rosé in a parade.
Oh yeah,
He
he's a
taught all of
legend.
our players like how to be smarter on the court. He is just it's a big loss not to have him around.
Yes.
And he's still incredible on defense just because he's so smart and so strong.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we definitely lose something defensively, and we're losing a great character guy as well, and we're just losing his brilliance. And there is no replacing Marc Gasol. Like, he really is a one of a kind player. But I
Yes.
am okay with the Raptors moving on from him at this point in his career. And oddly enough, he said it in his goodbye statement that he released on Twitter. I don't know if you saw this, but he said in his goodbye
No.
statement that the Raptors needed him to do more than he could. Isn't that wild?
Really?
Yeah, he said that. And so
Like, did he elaborate?
let's see if I can pull it up. He didn't elaborate too much. It was a pretty short and sweet statement, but he thanked Toronto.
That is very fascinating to me. And I was saying to a mutual friend of ours, Ennis Esmer, that I don't know. I feel like this isn't like I'm like looking for reasons for Nurse to not be great because he is great. But I'm interested to see like how is Ibaka used? How is Gasol used? And then, reflect back on this year being like, oh, could Nurse have tried this? Or hey, maybe Nurse used Gasol better than who's the head coach of the Lakers?
Vogel.
Frank. Yeah. Sorry. I feel like you were looking up that.
I am looking it up, but I'm absolutely listening to you simultaneously.
And just because I don't want to leave the legend that is Serge like without some love. He was like, if Gasol was like brains and like brought everyone like more sophistication on the court, Serge was like personality, style, and toughness. Because Kyle's tough, right? But Kyle's like, I don't know. No, Kyle he's like a guard type of tough,
Yeah.
But Serge is like, I am like the biggest guy at the gym type tough. I'll fight anyone. I'll dunk on anyone. I'm so confident. I'm like good looking. I'm fashionable. Like Serge brought this like bigger than life attitude to the team. And the skill set will be sorely missed. Like the shot blocking and the threes. Like I think Baines can do some of that, but I know we'll get to those guys. But
I mean,
no one can really replace Serge. I don't think that we got.
No, I think they're both legends. They are completely irreplaceable, and I think even just from a fan charisma perspective, they will also not be replaced. I cannot find this statement for the life of me, so I apologize, but please take my word for it that he said
I do. I take
the
your word for it.
needed him to do more than he could, which is true.
Yeah,
I actually found the honesty quite refreshing.
Yeah, I wonder what I wonder if you gave like Serge some truth serum. I wonder what he would say about like the Boston series or but
I mean, I will agree with you that I do think Nick Nurse made some mistakes in that Boston series, but
it's minor though.
It's minor.
It's minor.
It's minor because I mean, I don't think that team goes to a game 7 against Boston without a lot of Nick Nurse's brilliance. Not to take anything away from the players because they obviously stepped up in their own right. I mean, Kyle was next level, really reaffirmed his Hall of Fame case. Like OG Anunoby really stepped up.
Well,
Kyle had a big game 6,
And we were like so elite on defense, and I think that the difference was Kyle was like, okay, well, the offense that's been built here, it's not getting it done. So I'm going to be the offense. And I think that's kind of what like helped get us to like 7 games. But yeah, if Nurse isn't coaching, that we probably lose that in like 5 games, right? And that's the thing though. I mean, you need Nurse against a guy like Stevens, who I've ripped on for years, but Stevens is a really good coach. He's definitely very good at maneuvering. I think got a bit too much love too early, but from the media, but at the same time, it's still good. So you got to give him credit.
Yeah, I mean, Brad Stevens just has that like Harvard, then went to Silicon Valley, then came back kind of like salesman sheen on him, like that nerdy, but I'm a bully at the same
Also,
time kind of vibe.
the ringer killed him for me early on when I don't know if it was Bill Simmons, but someone was like, "Would you rather have Brad Stevens or Giannis Antetokounmpo?" And I was
Oh,
like, "Now
ridiculous.
Brad Stevens in my mind is banished because that question's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life." You would have Giannis Antetokounmpo over any coach,
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of this weird overvaluing of coaches in general that I think like I don't know, it feels icky sometimes when people are like, "Oh, the coaches is the one responsible for like everything that happened on the court."
Yeah,
You know
because
what I
it's
mean?
just not true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about these new guys. Let's do our rookies first. Let's talk about Malachi Flynn and Jalen Harris. Now, first of all, I think Malachi Flynn has like a great name. Like it feels like a stage name. Like he was just born with a stage name, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And like that also seems like a nice combo of names. Like
Right.
Malachi seems like it's like, okay, you got a Wes Anderson thing going on. And
Right.
Flynn is like, tough, steady.
Yeah. I feel like
Uh,
everyone's gonna try it and give him some weird nickname, and I'm like, can we just like keep the guy's name? You know, maybe that takes a bit of joy. Maybe I'm being too pretentious here, but I just think he has a solid name.
yeah, Malachi Flynn. Yeah, all I got is like there's MF, so that maybe there's like a MF Doom thing there,
Okay.
you
Yeah.
know,
Fair. 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 Fair.
MF Raptor, but
Fair.
that's not good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Malachi Flynn's good. No, yeah, I mean, I don't know too much about these guys. I'm not like a major college buff, but it does seem like they're both very like heady, kind of like in the make of like Fred and Kyle style
Very much so.
guards.
Very much
I
so.
think Harris is 6'2", maybe, or he's bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. He's taller.
But Malachi Flynn seems like not big, but he seems like one of these guys that is just solid all the way around, but doesn't have the eye-popping stuff that would get you high in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it was so funny. Like they had to do a couple like, Raptors press things, and they did a couple videos where it absolutely looked like there was a gun to their head off camera somehow. Like
Yeah.
it was a bit cringy. I was
Oh,
like,
I
okay.
saw the one where he's like, "Hey, Raptors, we the North,"
Yeah, yeah.
and it's like, "Are you guys scared? What's going on?"
And Malachi Flynn has like these clutched fists in the video, so it's like he felt tense, like he was far from relaxed when they
Yeah.
were doing these takes. Like they don't even know the Osmos shawarma commercials ahead of them, you know what I mean?
Oh, the Osmo. Yeah, they have no idea that they're gonna be doing very specific Toronto ads. Like one of those dudes is gonna be advertising for like Kinton Ramen for sure.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna have another one doing like maybe Brooklyn Pizza.
Yeah, maybe. It'll be fun. It'll be fun and it'll be weird whenever they actually make it to Toronto. But let's move on to the other players, Aaron Baines, Alex Len, and DeAndre Bembry. A few friends have pointed out to me that they are attracted to Aaron Baines. So he's already getting a lot of attention. He has a fan club.
Baines is gonna be a hit.
Yeah, he's gonna
I
be
can
a
tell you
hit.
that right now. With Toronto fans
Yeah.
of all types, they're gonna love Baines. He's
Yeah.
funny. He's like, like a little bit like, yeah, it's not. I don't even want to speak ill of Serge by saying he can fill in some of that gap, but he's a bit of a goof. He's fairly confident, and he also is like, who brought this up? I want to give him credit. I think it was Sean Woodley of Locked On Raptors was saying that he's played so much international basketball that he's going to connect with Nurse right away. He's
Right.
going to be able to run all of Nurse's wild zone schemes and stuff. So people are going to like Baines, and he can shoot the three, like willingly shoot the three, which is that's going to be a big addition to our offense. I think him shooting the three that regularly.
Right. Yeah, I'm really excited for him. I think he was a pretty good pickup. I was pretty nervous after we lost Gasol and Serge that like, oh God, we don't have a center. What are we gonna do? You know, like it was a little "Ugh." But then we kind of, we stopped the flood, we filled that gap. So we're good as far as that goes. I don't know if you have any thoughts on Alex Len or DeAndre Bembry. Admittedly, I do not know much about either of these guys. I feel
Okay.
like these are some solid bench pickups, but you tell me.
I got some stuff. All right. So
Ooh.
Len, the first thing is my wife just refused to believe that he doesn't look identical to JV.
Okay.
And I was showing her pictures. She's like, that's Jonas Valanciunas. And I'm like, no, it's not. Different player. And she's like, I don't know. I think it is, Freddie. And anyways, that's that. I'll couch that. But he kind of has some of JV's, like, he's like got the soft JV skills.
Right.
He can block shots. He could rebound. He's 7 feet. He can do some stuff. He's 27 years old. I think he's kind of a nice, I've warmed up to him a bit more. When we first got him, I was like, yeah, whatever. Now I'm like, you know what? I think we'll find some uses for him. Like, I don't think he'll be totally invaluable.
Right.
Especially against teams that have like big guys, like if we play
Right.
Philly or whatever. Bembry, he seems like a solid kind of just 2-guard. He's got a lot of like, looks like McCaw a little bit, kind of like smart, tough, not a willing shooter, doesn't do much on offense. But admittedly, I haven't watched a lot of Bembry. Apparently he's fun and like funny though.
Okay, well that's good. We're gonna need that, honestly.
And by the way, with the Raptors, also some news here, agreed to a deal with forward Elise Johnson, who played for Indiana. So he's, I think, our Duan Hernandez replacement.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully he's a good facial expression bench guy.
Yeah, that's what we're
for a Chris Boucher future block.
Yeah.
With that being said, as we wrap up here on this episode, let's move into everyone's favorite segment, the Hot Girl Summer Nick Nurse highlight of the week.
Let's do it.
So there are 2 highlights this week. One of which, this is so ridiculous. If anyone new to the show, I have a major crush on Nick Nurse. It is what it is. His wife, Roberta, released some family portraits. They did a photo shoot recently. They all wore matching gray tracksuits. Very cute. I gotta say, if I was in the family, it wouldn't be my first choice. It's like, we get it, you're a coach, you know what I mean? Ooh, look at us, we're sporty, but it's super adorable nonetheless. I think I shared it with the streaming crying emoji, because
I feel like you're having mixed feelings about this.
Yeah, I was just dying from the cuteness of it all. But also it's like, how are people, like, rich people just live differently, you know what I mean? It's like, how are you doing like photo shoots and like I mean, they're outdoors, they're in a field, like, you know what I mean? I'm sure the photographer was like 6 feet apart and all that, but it was just like the happy photo shoot in a time like this. But anyway, the other thing was that Nick Nurse had his first ever Black Friday sale. I don't get paid to say that, and all his merch is 15% off.
Nurse.
So there you go, buddy. We got a
undefeated branding. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I just got the 30-second mark. So Freddie, where can we find you on the internets?
Check out my podcast at Dunks Podcast on Twitter, and the full name of the podcast is at Confederacy of Dunks Basketball Podcast.
Thank you so much for joining me this week. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at itsme_Catherine, spelled CATHRYN. This has been another episode of the Buckets and Tea Show. Thanks so much, everybody, and we will see you next week, every Friday at 9 p.m. Take care.
Thanks,
Bye.